Well, we were called insubordinate young whelps at last, and strictly forbidden to take the Tommies out any more without orders. I wasn't sorry, because Tommy is such an exacting sort of creature. He wants to live as though he were in barracks all the time. I was grubbing on fowls and boiled corn, but my Tommies wanted their pound of fresh meat, and their half-ounce of this, and their 2 ounces to the other thing, and they used to come to me and badger me for plug tobacco when we were 4 days in the jungle. I said, "I can get you Burma tobacco, but I don't keep a canteen up my sleeve." They couldn't see it. They wanted all the luxuries of the season, confound 'em. "You were alone when you were dealing with these men?" Cleaver said, watching the infant's face under the palm of his hand. He was getting new ideas, and they seemed to trouble him. Of course, unless you count the mosquitoes. They weren't nearly as big as the men. After I had to lie doggo, I began to look for something to do, and was great pals with a man called Hicksy in the police, the best man that ever stepped on earth, a first-class man. Cleaver nodded applause. He knew how to appreciate enthusiasm. Hicksy and I were thick as thieves. He had some Burma-mounted police, rummy chaps, armed with swords and Snyder carabine. They rode punchy Burma ponies with string stirrups, red cloth saddles, and red bell rope headstalls. Hicksy used to lend me 6 or 8 of them when I asked him. Nippy little devils, keen as mustard. But they told their wives too much, and all my plans got known, till I learned to give false marching orders overnight and take the men to quite a different village in the morning. Then we used to catch the simple daku before breakfast and make 'em very sick. It's a ghastly country on the Hindalaton. All the bamboo jungle with paths about 4 feet wide winding through it. The dakus knew all the paths and potted at us as we came round a corner. But the mounted police knew the paths as well as the dakas, and we used to go stalking 'em in and out. Once we flushed 'em, the men who got on the ponies had the advantage of the men on the foot. We held all the country absolutely quiet for 10 miles round in about a month. Then we took Bo Nagi, Hicksy and I, and the civil officer. That was a lark. "And I think I am beginning to understand a little," said Cleaver. "It was a pleasure for you to administer and fight?" "Rather. There's nothing nicer than a satisfactory little expedition when you find your plans fit together and your confirmations teak correct, you know, and the whole sub-shiz. I mean, when everything works out like a formula on a blackboard." Hicksy had all the information about the bow. He had been burning villages and murdering people right and left and cutting up government convoys and all that. He was lying doggo in a village about 15 miles off, waiting to get a fresh gang together. So we arranged to take 30 mounted police and turn him out before he could plunder into our newly settled villages. At the last minute, the civil officer in our part of the world thought he'd assist at the performance. "Who was he?" said Nevin. "His name was Dennis," said the infant slowly, "and we'll let it stay so. He's a better man now than he was then." "But how old was the civil power?" said Cleaver. "The situation is developing itself." "He was about 26 and was awfully clever. He knew a lot of things, but I don't think he was quite steady enough for dakati hunting. We started overnight for Bo Nagi's village, and we got there just before morning without raising an alarm. Dennis had turned out armed to his teeth, 2 revolvers, a carbine, and all sorts of things. I was talking to Hicksy about posting the men, and Dennis edged his pony in between us and said, "What shall I do? What shall I do? Tell me what to do, you fellows." We didn't take much notice, but his pony tried to bite me in the leg, and I said, Pull out a bit, old man, till we've settled the attack." He kept edging in and fiddling with his reins and his revolvers and saying, dear me, oh, dear me, what do you think I'd better do?" The man was in a deadly funk, and his teeth were chattering. "I sympathize with the civil power," said Cleaver. "Continue, young Clive." The fun of it was that he was supposed to be our superior officer. Hicksy took a good look at him and told him to attach himself to my party. Beastly mean of Hicksy, that. The chap kept on edging in and bothering, instead of asking for some men and taking up his own position, till I got angry and the carbines began popping on the other side of the village. And then I said, "For God's sakes, be quiet and sit down where you are. If you see anybody coming out of the village, shoot at him." I knew he couldn't hit a hayrack at a yard. Then I told my men over the garden yard, over the palisades, you know, somehow or other, and the fun began. Hicksy had found the bow in bed under a mosquito curtain, and he had taken a flying jump onto him. A flying jump? Said Cleaver. Is that also war? Yes, said the infant, now thoroughly warmed. Don't you know how do you take a flying jump to a fellow's head at school when he snores in the dormitory? The beau was sleeping in a bed full of swords and pistols, and Hicksy came down like Zale through the netting, and the net got mixed up with the pistols and the bow and Hicksy, and they all rolled on the floor together. I laughed till I couldn't stand it, and Hicksy was cursing me for not helping him. So I left him to fight it out and went into the village. Our men were slashing about and firing, and so were the Ducatis. And in the thick of it, some ass set fire to a house, and we all had to clear out. I froze onto the nearest Daku and ran to the palisade, shoving him in front of me. He wriggled loose and bounded over the other side. I came after him, but when I had one leg one side and one leg on the other palisade, I saw that the Daku had fallen flat on Dennis's head. That man had never moved where I left him. They rolled on the ground together, and Dennis's carbine went off, and it nearly shot me. The Daku picked himself up and ran, and Dennis buzzed his carbine after him, and it caught him on the back of the head and knocked him silly. You never saw anything so funny in your life. I doubled up on the palisades and hung there, yelling with laughter, but Dennis began to weep like anything. "Oh, I've killed a man," he said. "I've killed a man, and I shall never know another peaceful hour in my life. Is he dead? Oh, is he dead? Good Lord, I've killed a man." I came down and said, "Don't be a fool," but he kept on shouting, "Is he dead?" till I could have kicked him. The Daku was only knocked out of time with the carbine. He came to after a bit, and I said, "Are you hurt much?" He groaned and said, "No." His chest was all cut with scrambling over the palisade. "The white man's gun didn't do that," he said. I did that, and I knocked the white man over." Just like a Burman, wasn't he? But Dennis wouldn't be happy at any price. He said, "Tie up his wounds. He'll bleed to death. Oh, he'll bleed to death." "Tie him up yourself," I said, if you're so anxious. I can't touch him," said Dennis, "but here's my shirt." He took off his shirt and fixed the braces again over his bare shoulders. I ripped the shirt up and bandaged the Ducati quite professionally. He was grinning at Dennis all the time, and Dennis's haversack was lying on the ground, bursting full of sandwiches. Greedy hog. I took some and offered some to Dennis. "How can I eat?" he said. "How can you ask me to eat? His very blood is on your hands now, and you're eating my sandwiches." "All right," I said. "I'll give him to the Daku." So I did, and the little chap was quite pleased, and wolfed him down like 1 o'clock. Cleaver brought his hand down on the table with a thump that made the empty glasses dance. "That's art," he said. "Flat, flagrant mechanism. Don't tell me that happened on the spot." The pupils of the infant's eyes contracted to 2 pinpoints. "I beg your pardon," he said, slowly and stiffly, "but I am telling this thing as it happened." Cleaver looked at him a moment. "My fault entirely," he said. "I should have known. Please go on." Hicksy came out of what was left of the village with his prisoners and captives, all neatly tied up. Bonagi was first, and one of the villagers, as soon as he found the old ruffian helpless, began kicking him quietly. The beau stood it as long as he could, and then groaned, and we saw that what was going on. Hicksy tied the villager up and gave him half a dozen, good, with a bamboo, to remind him to leave a prisoner alone. You should have seen the old beau grin. Oh, but Hicksy was in a furious rage with everybody. He got a wipe over the elbow that had tickled up his funny bone, and he was rabid with me for not having helped him with a bow and the mosquito net. I had to explain that I couldn't do anything. If you'd seen them both tangled up together on the floor in one kicking cocoon, you'd have laughed for a week. Hicksy swore that the only decent man of his acquaintance was the beau, and all the way to camp, Hicksy was talking to the beau, and the beau was complaining about the soreness of his bones. When we got back and had a bath, the beau wanted to know when he was going to be hanged. Hicksy says he couldn't oblige him on the spot, but had to send him to Rangoon. The beau went down on his knees and reeled off a catalogue of his crimes. He ought to have been hanged 17 times over by his own confession, and implored Hicksy to settle the business out of hand. "If I'm sent to Rangoon, he said, "they'll keep me in jail all my life, and that is death every time the sun gets up or the wind blows." But we had to send him to Rangoon, and, of course, he was let off down there and given a penal servitude for life. When I came to Rangoon, I went over to the jail. I'd helped fill it, you know, and the old beau was there, and he spotted me at once. He begged for some opium first, and I tried to get him some, but that was against the rules. Then he asked me to have his sentence changed to death because he was afraid of being sent to Invntns, and I couldn't do that either, but I tried to cheer him, and I told him how things were going up country, and the last thing he said was, "Give my compliments to the fat white man who jumped on me. If I'd been awake, I'd have killed him. I wrote that to Hicksy next mail, and that's all. I'm afraid I've been gassing awfully, sir." Cleaver said nothing for a long time. The infant looked uncomfortable. He feared that, misled by enthusiasm, he had filled up the novelist's time with unprofitable recital of trivial anecdotes. Then said Cleaver, "I can't understand. Why should you have seen and done all these things before you have cut your wisdom teeth?" "Don't know," said the infant apologetically. "I haven't seen much. Only Burmese jungle." "And dead men, and war, and power, and responsibility," said Cleaver under his breath. "You won't have any sensation left at 30, if you go on as you've done." "But I want to hear more tales, more tales." He seemed to forget that even subalterns might have engagements of their own. "We were thinking of dining out somewhere, a lot of us, and we're going to the Empire afterwards," said Nevin, with hesitation. He did not like to ask Cleaver to come too. The invitation might be regarded as perilously near to cheek, and Cleaver, anxious not to wag a grey beard unbidden among boys at large, said nothing on his side. Boileau solved the little difficulty by blurting out, "Won't you come too, sir?" Cleaver almost shouted, "Yes!" And while he was being helped into his coat and continued to murmur, "Good heavens," at intervals in the way the boys could not understand. "I don't think I've been to the Empire in my life," said he. "But what is my life after all? Let us go."